Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, September 8th, 2025. Larry Johnson joins us now. Larry, I want to spend some time chatting with you about President Putin and NATO. But before we do, this morning, Secretary Rubio announced a crackdown of United States visas from persons coming from Central and South America because of their exercise of the freedom of speech in their own countries. Why are we picking fights with people in Latin America, with Latin American countries? What is this all about?
I really have no idea. I mean, this tendency to want to pick a fight with everybody in the world is to me sort of a sign of mental illness that seems to have seized the Trump administration. And instead of starting off with, hey, how can we get along? What can we do to cooperate? And I guess I'm presuming that Rubio's actions are taken against those individuals and countries that are speaking out against the genocide in Israel. That would be my guess.
He's also claiming that some of them, by their words, are helping China. I don't get the connection at all, but it's all very fanciful. It's all based on the freedom of speech. It's all based upon punishing innocents. This is the same Rubio that won't allow anybody with a Palestinian passport, whether you're Mahmoud Abbas or whether you're some kid that needs a prosthetic leg, to come into the United States.
Well, we're also upset that China has made significant inroads in establishing economic ties with a number of countries, in particular Brazil. And just in the last 2 months, with the imposition of Trump's tariffs, Brazil is now no longer selling coffee in any quantity to the United States. It's all going to China. China is purchasing soybeans from Brazil instead of from the United States. But you've got China also involved with economic projects in Peru and I believe Chile as well. So, the United States is now trying to push back to take back its, quote, control of the hemisphere. The problem is China, the relationship with China doesn't come with all these huge strings attached like it does with the United States. We're like the mafia coming in and tell you, hey, you need some protection or your shop's going to get blown up. No, my shop's fine. Just watch. We're in a protection racket. And, I think it's the United States is really coming at this too late to try to defang the economic muscle of China.
Do you think any of this is a reaction to the extraordinary show of military force in Beijing last week?
Maybe to an extent, but you forget, we won World War II. China hardly had anything to do with it. In Trump,
well, that's what Trump claims.
Yeah, in Trump world, his so-called he calls his social media posts on Truth Social, he calls them truths, and it's it would be funny in a different context, but he is telling untruth on truth. So it was though quite a discrepancy. Or it highlighted the differences between China and the United States. Trump put on a parade that was, basically a joke with soldiers who couldn't march in unison. And whereas China put on this extravaganza that even dwarfed what Russia did on May 9th and did it with tens of thousands of soldiers, all who were meticulously trained. So it showed that China is not just some authoritarian state, that the Chinese hierarchy, the leadership from the top down, was able to convey, here's the standard, here's what we want to achieve, and they achieved it. We can't do that. We're capable of doing that in the United States, but we don't do it.
Do you think that they revealed the existence of weapons of which the Pentagon had previously been unaware?
That I don't know. I've heard some reports that they certainly did demonstrate some more some weapons that they had not been seen in public. Now, usually the DoD and CIA, they're pretty good at being able to come up with photographs and images of these things before they're publicly acknowledged. But this was I think particularly some of the directed energy systems. I think that was the first time they were on public display.
What are directed energy systems?
Like lasers.
Oh. Got it. To what extent are NATO officers or grunts participating in the special military operation in behalf of Ukraine and against Russia?
Well, there's a YouTube channel by called Berzik Man, who every day puts out about an 8 to 10 minute video on attacks, and he's made several in the last 4 weeks where the Russian attacks killed, according to him, NATO officers and NATO personnel, from one who were manning a Patriot system, a group of Brits who were helping plan future attacks in Crimea, etc. So what we haven't seen is any public, publicity surrounding this in the West. I take the reports with a grain of salt. Maybe they're true, but Russia has made it very clear that if NATO openly tries to deploy any forces into Ukraine, they will be targeted and they will be destroyed.
Here's Dmitry Peskov, the chief spokesperson for the Kremlin, being asked a question about this 3 days ago. Chris, cut number 1.
We consider it a danger for us, presence of international forces or any foreign forces or NATO country forces on the soil of Ukraine next to our borders. So in our understanding, it will not help us get closer to the solution of Ukrainian conflict.
But why doesn't Ukraine have the right, as far as Russia is concerned, to invite whoever it wants, whichever soldiers it wants, onto its territory? I mean, Russia is inviting North Korean troops.
Then it's a danger for us. It's a real danger for us because we are an enemy of NATO.
North Korean troops are a danger to Ukraine.
Written in NATO's documents. So we cannot afford that. And we'll do whatever is necessary to ensure our security.
Ever heard an official Russian spokesperson use that phrase before, Larry? We are an enemy of NATO.
Right. Well,
by the way, here's the precision troops. Chris, put that back up. The precision troops that you talked about. We're only looking at a few. There were 100,000 of them.
Yeah. I mean, there's just row upon row. And again, to get people to march and to do this, and it's just remarkable. No, I put a piece up on Sonar 21 about 3-4 days ago, going through. First, it's a video from 2001 where Vladimir Putin reads, declassifies a document. They're at the summit in Slovenia, and George W. Bush is standing there.
Oh, I saw that, and Bush is laughing like a child.
Yeah, just a dummy. And Putin reads this declassified document from 1954, in which the Soviet Union approached NATO and said, "Hey, why don't you let us join? We'll be part of this." And the West said basically, "No way in hell, go away." Because, if we don't have the Soviet Union as out there as the enemy, how do we justify this continued military expansion and buildup? And then Putin then went on to say, and he said that then I made the request to Bill Clinton, and the former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, just said, "No way." So from that point on, it's in 2007, first at the Munich Security Conference, that Putin really laid into NATO and explained why NATO was creating a threat for Russia. He reiterated that at the I think it was the Bucharest summit in April of 2008. So it was very clear what Russia's position was vis-a-vis NATO. And the West has consistently told the Russians, go to hell. We don't care what you think. We're going to do what we want to do regardless.
And why the hell was Bush laughing?
Yeah, it's a mystery. It's just, I mean, it was so out of sync. Instead of taking that opportunity to say, hey, I never heard or knew that. President Putin, I pledge to you today, we're going to work so that we can work together. Yeah, you can join NATO. We're going to, because we do that, we no longer need $1 trillion in the Defense Department.
Right.
Oh, excuse me, the Department of War.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Here's President Putin himself. This is just 3 days ago on NATO in Ukraine. Number 3, Chris.
Regarding possible military contingents in Ukraine, this is one of the root causes trying to involve Ukraine in NATO. So if any troops appear there, especially during the ongoing hostilities, we assume they'll be legitimate targets for defeat.
That's international law.
Yeah.
If any troops appear there, they'll be legitimate targets for defeat. If they're out of uniform, they don't have Geneva Convention protection. They can be arrested and summarily executed as spies. If they're in uniform, they're legitimate targets.
Correct.
Are MI6 and CIA on the ground advising Ukrainians how to pinpoint Russian targets and kill them, Russian assets or Russian human beings?
Well, I'm sure there's MI6 CIA personnel in country. And one of the areas is of intelligence support. So the CIA can be, and I'm sure has been, a conduit to both the military branch, but also the intelligence branch and the SBU. The United States is complicit. It has blood on its hands from the Russians who've died in this war, both civilians and military. And again, that's why I don't understand why Donald Trump, who proclaims a desire for peace, continues to enable this activity. If the United States stopped the funds, stopped the weapons, stopped the intelligence sharing, Ukraine, I think, would be hard pressed to continue fighting for another 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. And he, of course, did boast that the war would be over within 24 hours, and then he checked himself and said, I might be able to end the war before I'm even inaugurated. And of course, we all know what has happened. His most recent public order was the authorization for 3,500 medium-range missiles. Scott says they're not even built yet, but Trump made a big splash about authorizing them.
Again, I don't know if there are some out there like Alex Craner who argue that Trump is doing this as a way to defuse the neocon opposition to his quiet behind-the-scenes efforts to actually work out a peace deal with Putin. I would hope that is the case, but you still got to look. It's not just a matter. We can ignore what Trump says. Let's watch what he does. And outside of Ukraine, we haven't seen him take any steps right now to curtail military support on the intelligence side. No sign of that whatsoever. And then we watch him in other areas of the world continuing to enable the slaughter of Palestinians, the genocide by the Israelis, boosting military forces off the coast of Venezuela and making threats. Trump just seems hell-bent on provoking conflicts instead of settling them.
Here's President Putin on whether or not he would meet with President Zelensky The short answer is yeah, only if Zelensky comes to Moscow. I can't imagine that happening. But anyway, Chris, number 4. I mean, he's obviously suggesting something he knows Zelensky is not going to do, because here's Zelensky's response, which basically says, yeah, Putin can come to Kyiv, which is also inconceivable. Chris, cut number 5.
He said he will meet if you come to Moscow.
He can come to Kyiv. You know, if a person doesn't want to meet during the war, of course he can propose something which can't be acceptable by me or by others. It's understandable. I can't go to Moscow when my country is under missiles, under attacks each day. I can't go to this capital of these terrorists. It's understandable, and he understands it. It's the same proposition, as I said, that he has to come to Kyiv. Yeah, so it's understandable that he is doing it to postpone the meeting. We said, I always said we can't trust Putin. He plays games, and he's playing games with the United States.
I mean, is this the way negotiations in a neutral city like, say, Geneva begin, or are these guys just tweaking each other?
Well, Putin, he said some things prior to what was shown on that clip. And he went through a detailed explanation of the Ukrainian constitution. And he pointed out there's nothing in the Ukrainian constitution that allows a president, once his term ends, to continue in office using the excuse of martial law, then we can't hold elections.
Well, on that he's correct. Legally, he is correct.
Yeah, and that was Putin's point. He said, yeah, I can meet with him, but it doesn't accomplish anything because Zelensky, legally, under the Ukrainian constitution, no longer has the power or the authority to represent the country. The one that legally now would be in a position to do something would be the head of the Rada, the head of the legislature. Putin was saying, look, yeah, we can meet, we can talk, but the more fundamental issue is who's coming to the table prepared to, we've got several issues. Issue 1 for Russia is the territories we currently occupy, those are permanently part of Russia. That's not open for discussion. That's not open for negotiation. No bargaining on that. The Crimea, and then Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, these are permanently part of Russia. Secondly, NATO's got to get out. You've got to stop doing military exercises. No more NATO military personnel in Ukraine. That is a non-negotiable point for Russia. And people say, well, then how can it be negotiations if they refuse to compromise? They're not going to compromise on that. So people need to, get that out of their head that Russia somehow is going to compromise, because what Putin has learned, as you go back to that 2001 exchange with George W. Bush, followed by his very direct, candid remarks to NATO in both 2007, 2008, is he's the one that's been getting bamboozled. He's the one that's been played for a fool, and he's no longer going to accept that. And so, yeah, they would like to resolve it peacefully, but I think they realize the only way this is going to get settled is on the battlefield.
Do you think that President Putin told President Trump in Alaska that the Russians would not use nukes in Ukraine?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Putin's not going to box himself in and take anything off the table. It would be, he may have done that, but I think it would have been foolish on his part. You leave everything on the table, because otherwise the West assumes you're not serious.
Do you accept the theory that Putin's goal in Ukraine, in addition to making sure NATO doesn't show up, and in addition to capturing the Russian-speaking and historically Russian areas in the East, wants to obliterate the Ukrainian military and hence the slow, methodical destruction of it?
Yeah, no, he made the two objectives from the outset. to demilitarization, denazification. That means, to speak of denazification, it means you're going to eliminate the current parties that are allowed to exist in Ukraine that have strong ties with this ultra-right fanatics, the right sector, Azov battalion. But then you're going to make sure that Ukraine no longer has a modern military. It will be allowed to have a police force, sort of if you will, a national guard, but no longer is Russia going to put up with letting them have a full-blown military capability on their border. If you go back to the negotiations in March and April of 2022, Russia then was actually willing to accept a Ukrainian military, a reduced in size, but it was going to accept it. Going forward, no. There will not. This Ukrainian military, once it's defeated, will cease to exist.
How close is the current Ukrainian military to the end, Larry? Do we know?
Now, you look at it, I don't see how they've survived this long. Those who think that we'll be in the same situation a year from now, I doubt that. Because Putin and his general, they are increasing the tempo of operations. So the war will be ended at least they'll take full possession of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson. And then it'll be up to Ukraine to decide, does it want to retain any access to the Black Sea, or is Russia going to press on and take that as well?
What about Finland, Larry? Are NATO troops in Finland? Because that has a huge border with Russia. I think they were crazy to join NATO. They were happy, prosperous when they were neutral, but that's not the case at the present time.
Well, Finland has a history. Remember who they sided with during the Second World War? They sided with Nazi Germany. And yes, there are NATO personnel, and there's the NATO bases, effectively NATO bases, though not necessarily identified as such. But the reality, Finland is small potatoes. Finland's not a large country, and Finland doesn't have a large army. And it's the same reason that Russia is not preoccupied with the antics of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia on its northern border, because they're trying to turn the tide against NATO. The most effective place to do that now is in Ukraine. But you correctly note that NATO, it's not just in Finland. They've been trying to provoke Russia in the Baltic Sea. And so that is another, I know that you talked with Doug McGregor about this last week. That is a flashpoint out there that could rapidly ignite and spin this off into a much larger war than what we're witnessing.
Hi, Larry, thank you very much. There seems to be no end to all this. I appreciate your allowing me to go across the board on all this. And thank you for the great research that you post at your website, Sonar 21. As you know, I read it first thing in the morning.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey, let's find something cheery to talk about next time.
We'll do our best. I'll find something that'll make you, and maybe I'm promising something I can't deliver, you and Ray McGovern laugh or be happy about on Friday. There's a challenge.
Yeah, all right, we'll see you then.
Thank you, Larry. All the best.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Coming up later today at on all of this at 1:30 this afternoon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.